Tsavo North, late afternoon. A young bull elephant stood half-submerged in a frozen bend of the river, his front legs wedged beneath a crust of thin ice that had buckled beneath his weight. His hindquarters trembled with the effort of staying upright, but the water dragged at him constantly, the current low yet forceful, pulling toward the bend. Sheets of ice pressed against his flank, shifting with every breath he took. He didn't call out. He didn't move much, just stood, shoulder deep, the water licking cold against his chest, steam rising faintly from his back. On the far ridge, 2 rangers had stopped their patrol when they spotted the still shape in the river's crook. From the distance, it had looked like driftwood. Then the ear flinched once. The one who first stepped down through the frost-lined brush was named Elias. Tall, heavy boots, calm voice, familiar with frozen rescue work but never with something this size. As he approached slowly, he saw the thick, wet hide, the way the young bull's trunk curled close to his chest like a rope drawn tight. His right tusk was chipped, probably from trying to strike the ice. His eyes blinked once, slow. No panic, just exhaustion. Elias didn't speak at first. He paused 10 meters away, crouched low, and looked for signs of distress or erratic movement. None came. Only the tremble of the animal's back legs, shifting slightly in the freezing water. A narrow section of the riverbank sloped gently toward the ice edge, but not close enough. Even if the elephant moved now, the current could tip him, submerge him, and if he dropped, he might not rise again. If he slipped, he would drown. He radioed the others. His voice stayed low. Bull elephant, young, in the water. Will need ropes, at least 4 hands. The ice cracked again near the bull's side, not loudly, just a slow split, like fabric tearing under weight. Elias moved closer, boots sinking into the silt along the edge. The elephant turned his head slightly, tracking the movement. His breath came in slow huffs now, steaming faintly, then vanishing in the cold air. He didn't rear, he didn't flinch. He was past the energy to resist. His ears drooped low, soaked and flattened against his shoulders. He shifted his trunk once, barely clearing the waterline. Elias crouched again and stayed still. The others were minutes away. He kept his eyes steady on the elephants, not challenging, not comforting, just present. The waterline was just below the chest. If it rose even another 6 inches, the bull's weight would turn. If that happened, no rope would bring him back. If they didn't move fast enough, the ice would take him. Wind stirred across the trees behind them. The light had already started to dim, casting long shadows across the river. Snow hadn't fallen yet, but the air had that dry, brittle heaviness that came just before dusk in this part of the reserve. Elias took off his gloves and held out a hand. Not to touch, just to be seen. The elephant's eye followed the motion. Still no sound, still no movement. But he hadn't shut down entirely. Behind him, boots crunched through brush. Another ranger arrived with a looped coil of thick nylon rope and a wide wool tarp. Elias didn't turn. Wait until he shifts weight. We can't force him. The river moved steadily, tugging at the elephant's lower half. The ice groaned again, splintering near the edge. The bull's back leg lifted slightly, then set back down hard. His body jolted from the effort. Water sloshed against his belly. One ear twitched. His eye closed, opened again. Elias stepped 1 meter closer. Still no panic. Just a breath. A breath that didn't sound warm anymore. They had minutes, maybe less. If they waited too long, the river would take him. If they rushed, the ice could crack in full. If they did nothing, he would not stand again. From beneath the wind, a soft sound came. Not a cry, not a trumpet. Just air leaving his trunk, thin and faint. Enough to say he was still there, but not for long. The rope was looped, tied, and tested twice by the time the others arrived with the second set of hands. Elias kept his eyes on the elephant as the wind picked up and broke across the trees with a low murmur. The ice around the bull had begun to cave in slow, uneven sections, not loud, but deeply worrying. One crack at the wrong angle and the elephant could drop fully. If that happened, the river would take him in seconds. No ranger could pull that weight from a full submersion. They positioned the rescue lines from two ends, anchoring at opposing trees to split the tension. Elias had already shed his outer coat and wrapped his boots in cloth to reduce slippage. He moved carefully toward the sloped bank, keeping low, eyes on the elephant's side where the rib curve was barely visible beneath the mud-slicked waterline. The bull blinked slowly again. No thrash, no cry, just that same held breath, shallow and steady. If he moves too early, I go under with him, Elias said quietly, not for effect, just for fact. The others didn't respond. Everyone knew. Everyone had seen what water did when mass collapsed. A life could flip from reachable to unrecoverable in less than 3 seconds. He stepped down into the water. Not deep yet, just ankle level, but the current was cold and fast, curling around his legs like tight cords. One more step, knee-deep now. He kept the rope close to his side, trailing behind him like a second tail. The elephant watched, unmoving. That stillness wasn't calm, it was depletion. No more resistance, no energy to fear. His trunk floated half-curled near his shoulder, breathing shallow but rhythmic. If Elias startled him, even instinct could cause a final jerk that might break the ice shelf entirely. The surface around the elephant shimmered with microfractures, tiny webs radiating outward from his front legs where the weight pressed hardest. Elias stopped 3 meters away. No words, just waited. Watched the rise and fall of breath, the minute flicker of an ear catching wind, the slight tremor in the back knee that hadn't stopped since they arrived. Another crack, larger this time. The shelf behind the elephant's left flank gave way in a slow groan. Water surged around the opening, pulling loose branches downstream. The bull didn't shift, but his body dipped half an inch lower. Not much, but enough to matter. If the rear leg gave next, he'd tilt fully sideways. Elias moved. 2 more steps. He was now waist-deep, chest tightening from the cold. His movement stayed slow, deliberate, no jerking of the rope. He brought the end of the loop forward, stretching it one-handed across the gap between them. He reached low and set the rope gently just behind the elephant's shoulder joint, then backed away just as carefully, keeping it loose but placed. The bull blinked. Once. Twice. His trunk dipped slightly, touched the water, then floated again. He had felt the contact but didn't flinch. That was the best Elias could hope for. Once back on higher ground, Elias gave a small signal. The team anchored the rope. The pull would have to be diagonal. Too much force from the wrong angle and it would drag the elephant sideways into the fracture line. He stood, dripping, panting, watching the ice beneath the bull ripple with the pressure shift. If we pull too hard, he'll slip under. If we wait too long, he'll collapse anyway. There was no perfect decision. Only risk. Only wait. Only minutes left. They began to pull. Slowly. The rope took on tension. Slack vanished. The elephant's front leg shifted. Not a full movement, but a twitch upward, instinctual. His trunk flared once, not in fear but resistance. The rope cinched under his chest. Another small crack. Elias held his breath. The pull continued. The elephant moved 1 more inch forward, then another. He hadn't dropped. Not yet. But every second counted now, and they all knew. If he slipped, they wouldn't be able to save him again. The rope held firm. 3 men leaned their weight into the pull. Boots dug into frozen soil, every muscle drawn tight. Elias braced near the river's edge, water dripping from his sleeves, his hands raw and red from cold. The young bull did not resist. His body swayed with the force applied, front leg shifting inch by inch as the water broke against his chest. The ice cracked further, peeling back in jagged arcs as the forward motion displaced its weight. Each movement came slow, and with it came the risk of collapse. If the elephant tipped to the side, the rope would do nothing. If he lost his footing completely, they'd only pull dead weight. "Keep going," Elias said, voice low, steady. The bull's breath came in bursts now, mist rising from his trunk as his chest met air. For the first time his back was visible, ridged, dark, muscles sunken along the spine. A yearling, maybe just beyond adolescence. The ice had trapped him at a moment where strength was not enough, and panic had long since drained away. He didn't call out. He didn't thrash. He just moved when they pulled, his limbs staggering with each tug. The bank was slick with melting frost and mud. One of his front legs reached land first, hoof sinking into the soft edge, and the moment it touched down, his body lurched forward under its own weight. A gasp passed between the men, but no one let go. Elias kept the rope taut, guiding from the front while the others adjusted for the weight shift. The rear legs remained submerged, but the front half was free now. Trembling, wet, steaming. Water surged against his back legs as he tried to move again. This time it was not a pull from the team, but his own effort. His body tilted forward almost too far. For a second it looked like he might slip again, but his trunk shot outward, hitting the ground with a dull thud. He used it like a brace. His breath hitched once, trunk curling, ears twitching faintly. Then he moved again. One dragging step, another. The last pull came not from the rope, but from him. He heaved forward, shoulders jerking free of the ice, rear legs stumbling behind. The water let go. His body hit the riverbank with a dull, collapsing thud. Not violent, not final, just heavy and spent. Mud smeared across his flank. His legs folded beneath him without resistance. For a long moment, no one moved. Elias lowered the rope slowly. The others stepped back. All eyes were on the rise and fall of his chest. Shallow. But there. The bull lay still, his trunk resting along the ground, one eye half closed beneath a layer of frost and grit. His mouth moved faintly. Then, through the quiet, a low, fragile trumpet slipped out, soft, broken at the end, like a call unfinished. It barely echoed, but it reached them all. That sound didn't come from strength, it came from somewhere beyond exhaustion. A release, a sign that breath was still moving through his lungs, that he knew the cold had loosened its grip. They stepped back farther now. Elias crouched near the tree line, eyes fixed on the bull's side. The rise and fall of breath continued, slower now, but present. The team said nothing. No celebration, no movement. There was still risk. He could still slip into shock. His legs might not carry him again. But the river no longer pulled at his body. The cold no longer pressed against his chest. And for the first time in hours, he lay on solid ground. Steam lifted gently from his back into the wind. No more cracks beneath him, no more rope, just earth, just breath. The bull had not moved since collapsing. His body lay angled at the edge of the riverbank. Front legs tucked, back legs stretched awkwardly behind him. Water still dripped from his side in slow rivulets, pooling beneath his ribcage and soaking into the churned mud. His ears hung low, limp against his shoulders, and his trunk rested flat along the soil, unmoving. From a distance it looked like the weight of his own body had become too much. No lift of the head, no twitch of the skin, no sound, just stillness pressed into the ground like something finished. Elias crouched beside him, one knee sinking deep into the wet earth, the other planted firm for balance. He didn't touch the elephant at first, just watched, quietly, measuring breath against silence. For nearly a minute, there was nothing. Then the chest shifted, a shallow rise, barely noticeable but there. A breath, thin, unsteady, but unmistakable. He placed his hand gently on the elephant's side. The hide was coarse, wet, cold to the touch. Beneath it, the muscles did not tense or pull away. No reaction, but under the surface there was a slow pulse, faint but present. Elias left his hand there, steady. No pressure, just contact. Around them, the light began to dim further. The air took on a deeper chill. One of the rangers approached with a heavy wool tarp and laid it near the bull's back legs. They didn't try to lift or cover him fully. Too much movement could cause distress. Too much warmth, too fast, could shock the system. They draped only a portion across his rear flank, careful not to press down. The bull's tail flicked once under the cloth, barely lifting from the mud. Minutes passed. Breath continued, slow, almost mechanical. The kind of rhythm a body keeps when mind and instinct have gone quiet. But then came a shift. The elephant's trunk curled slightly just once like a hand adjusting in sleep. His eyelid lifted, not fully, but enough to reveal the dark, unblinking eye beneath. It did not scan or follow, just opened, then closed again. Elias leaned closer. "Still with us," he whispered, more to mark the moment than to be heard. What they faced now was not the danger of water, but the harder weight for the body to recover. Cold shock could slow the heart. Muscles could seize. Internal damage wasn't always visible. He might stand. He might not. But they could no longer force anything. All effort now depended on the elephant himself. Another ranger stepped forward with a thermal flask. Elias took it and uncapped it, letting a thin stream of warm water spill slowly onto the animal's trunk. Not enough to burn, just enough to signal temperature. The elephant flinched. Not violently, just a small pull away from the sensation. It was a response. That mattered. More minutes passed. The tarp steamed faintly where it met skin. Elias stayed crouched, hand still at the bull's side. The mud had soaked into his sleeves. His legs were beginning to numb from kneeling, but he didn't shift. The quiet was full now. Only the wind above the tree line moved with any confidence. A faint noise stirred from the elephant's throat. Not a trumpet, not a cry. Just breath passing through half-parted lips. The kind of sound that came not from strength, but from the body remembering it was still alive. The eye opened again. This time, it stayed open longer. A slow blink followed. Not recognition, just life. The team said nothing. There was nothing left to do but wait. If he stood, it would not be soon. If he failed, it would not be dramatic. But either way, he had returned from beneath the ice. The river moved quietly behind them. Steam lifted from his back. The wind stirred across the open field. Breath continued. Slow, warm, and steady. The smoke from the warming fires drifted low across the ground, catching in the folds of the grass and curling around the fallen elephant's body. Small branches crackled quietly, fed in careful intervals by one of the younger rangers. No flames touched the bull, only warmth drawn in by the air. 2 blankets now covered parts of his back and hind legs, damp in places but holding heat. Elias stood a few paces away, arms folded against his chest. Eyes fixed on the animal's flank where the breath still moved. Each rise was slow, but it hadn't stopped. That, for now, was enough. They had not tried to make him stand. Not yet. Pushing him too soon risked tearing internal ligaments or stressing a heart already slowed by cold. They would give him time. Time to feel ground instead of ice. Time to remember gravity in his own body. The risk remained clear. If shock set in deeper, if circulation failed, he could slip away quietly despite their efforts. That possibility lingered in every decision, shaping each movement into something deliberate and slow. The wind began to shift. From the east, a heavier current moved in, dry and broad, with the kind of reach that spread scent across great distances. The grass bent in one long motion. Elias glanced up. His boots shifted slightly in the softened ground. A faint rumble reached the edge of hearing, not thunder, not machinery. It grew only slightly, then leveled, low, steady, grounded. The ranger near the second fire paused, head tilted. They all turned toward the ridge. Across the frozen plain, just above the rise of bare brush and frostbitten acacia, the shapes emerged. Wide silhouettes, slow stepping. At first, just 2, then 5, then more. The herd. No calls, no panic, just motion. One by one, the elephants moved in formation, a steady diagonal line curving down the slope toward the riverbank. Their feet pressed into the frost-hardened soil, silent despite the size. The matriarch led, ears pushed slightly forward, trunk lowered but not extended. Behind her, juveniles flanked a larger male, likely an older sibling or cousin. At least 9 individuals crossed the ridge before the line shifted into a quiet semicircle. They were approaching the edge of their own, and the scent had brought them here. The bull did not react immediately. His eye stayed closed, trunk unmoving. But as the herd drew closer, his ear twitched once, then again. Elias stepped back, slowly. He lowered his arms. The fire continued to crackle beside them, but no one touched it now. The rangers stood still, heads slightly lowered, postures relaxed. Presence without interference. The matriarch stopped first, 20 meters away. Her body shifted as she braced her legs, not rigid, just grounded. She raised her trunk slightly and held it in the air, scenting. The others followed suit, one after another, forming a half circle that faced the bull without crowding him. No one stepped forward yet. They didn't need to. He was not alone now. The bull's trunk moved, a slow drag across the mud, curling toward his chest, then falling again. His ear lifted. His eye opened. The movement was brief, but it carried meaning. Recognition, maybe only sensory, but real. His family had found him. What had begun as rescue by men was now shifting into something else. The role of the rangers was no longer primary. They had pulled him from the water. But what came next was not theirs to lead. One of the youngest cows took a few slow steps forward. Her head stayed low, ears angled down. She paused halfway between the matriarch and the bull, then stopped, holding that space. The herd did not call out. There was no trumpet, only stillness. Only that steady rumble from deep within one of the elders, a sound so low it barely registered through the air, more vibration than voice. The rangers said nothing. There was nothing more to be said. The fires burned low. The last of the wind pushed the smoke outward across the plain, curling toward the oncoming dusk. The herd stood quiet, unmoving. And in the center of it all, the bull lay breathing, no longer surrounded by strangers. The bull stirred only once in the minutes that followed. His front leg dragged slightly inward, curling closer to his belly, then stilled again. His breath remained shallow but steady. The rangers kept their distance now, no longer adjusting blankets or feeding the fire. Their role had shifted. Where action once filled the hour, now there was stillness, watching, waiting, giving space to what came next. The matriarch remained at the front of the line. Her ears flicked gently in the cold wind. She lowered her trunk and placed it on the ground for a moment, then lifted it again, holding it above the bull's head. A long exhale passed through her, not loud but audible. The air moved faintly, warmed by her breath, and drifted downward. One by one, the others followed. Not all at once, not in unison, but in quiet sequence. A second cow stepped closer, then a juvenile, then another adult, taller, likely a sibling. Each took a step forward, raised their trunk, and held it just above the bull's body, not touching, not pressing, simply held. The gesture was not learned from people. It was theirs. Theirs alone. The formation widened slowly, a loose half-circle, not tight enough to crowd, not far enough to seem distant. The bodies created a shield, broad shoulders, thick legs, dark ears curved in the cold. They stood like a wall against the wind that rolled across the plain, anchoring the space around the bull without touching him. Not to block view, not to isolate, but to protect. The youngest among them moved in last. Its step was cautious, ears half-tucked, trunk swaying uncertainly before it found place beside the flank of an older cow. There it stopped, resting its body against hers. The fires burned low now, reduced to quiet embers. The rangers remained near the tree line. Elias shifted once, his boots cracking against the frost, but he didn't speak. He had seen elephants mourn. He had seen them surround their own after death. But this was different. The bull was still alive. Faintly, barely, but alive. And the herd had arrived not in panic, not in alarm, but with the stillness of those who knew what time was worth. There was no sound but the wind, and the occasional lift of dust as it curled around their legs. The elephants held their trunks overhead in turn, some resting them in the air, others letting them hover just above the ground. None touched the bull directly. He remained still at the center, wrapped loosely in wool and breath, surrounded now by heat, not from fire, but from bodies that had known him before this day. The cold air moved differently now. The herd had cut the wind's path. Their sheer presence had made the temperature feel altered, as if they brought with them a boundary the cold could not cross. The youngest shifted once, brushing its flank along its mother's side. Another adult stepped slightly closer, lowering its trunk just past the bull's front leg, then lifted it again, slower this time. The bull moved. Only a twitch. A slow stretch of the neck. The tip of his trunk curled inward, brushing mud, then relaxed again. It wasn't strength, it wasn't a return. But it was something. A sign the warmth had reached him. If he stood, it would take time. If he didn't, the herd would remain. But for now, they held their shape, not as a warning, not as farewell, but as a wall against the cold. The fire gave its final crack. The last coil of smoke lifted into the wind and disappeared. And the herd did not move. The herd held still for a long time. The wind passed gently across the plain, lifting dust and dry grass into low spirals that never reached the ring of bodies. The bull remained at the center, his limbs half-curled, his breathing soft and uneven beneath the wool and mud. His eyes opened now more often than before, blinking slowly, unfocused. He had not tried to rise. He had not needed to. Everything around him, warmth, quiet, protection, had come without motion. Elias hadn't moved either. He stood a short distance from the edge of the half-circle, arms at his sides, not crouched, not reaching, just present. His boots were caked in frost-tinged mud. His hands were still wet from the tarp. He watched, not in expectation, but in stillness. Then the matriarch stepped forward. There was no rush to it, no sudden gesture. Her footfalls were wide and silent, each one pressing deep into the earth before the next began. The herd parted slightly, shifting to give her space without breaking their arc. She approached from the bull's side, but her gaze wasn't on him. Not yet. She stopped just in front of Elias. Her ears hung at rest. Her trunk lowered, then lifted again, hovering in the space between them. She stood there for a moment, breath steady, body calm. Then she reached forward. Her trunk moved with measured precision, coiling upward, then downward, until it rested, gently, unshakably, against his left shoulder. It was not a strike, not a warning, not a push, just pressure, weighted and warm. Elias didn't move. His breath caught slightly, then slowed. He nodded once, barely. She held the touch for a few seconds more, then withdrew. Her trunk lowered to the ground, paused, then rose again. She turned without urgency and walked back toward the bull. Each step was slow, deliberate, measured against the tension in the soil and the stillness in the air. When she reached him, she lowered her head. Her trunk brushed his back, not searching, not testing, just acknowledgement. Then she moved closer and pressed the side of her head to his. It was not dramatic. There was no cry, no trumpet. Her forehead rested against his for several seconds. His trunk twitched once near her foot. Then she lifted her head and stepped back. The others responded in kind, not with contact but with subtle shifts. A juvenile swayed slightly, another adult pressed its trunk into the soil. The line held, but its energy softened. The protection remained, but the waiting changed. There was no more guarding. There was witnessing now. Elias let out a breath. He hadn't realized he'd been holding it. One of the younger rangers behind him lowered a radio from his shoulder, not speaking into it, just holding it ready. But no one spoke. There was nothing left to request, no commands to issue. The decision was no longer theirs. The matriarch moved to the opposite side of the bull and stopped. She didn't look back at Elias again. Her body shielded the wind now, standing between the setting sun and the one who had been pulled from the river. In the stillness that followed, the fires gave out their final breath of smoke. The cold began to slip across the plain again. But around the bull, it no longer touched the ground. The sun dipped lower behind the ridge. The light faded slowly, brushing against the backs of the herd. No sound came, no shift of urgency. Just breath, just presence, just earth. The light changed slowly. What had been deep night softened into blue, then gray, then the pale stretch of dawn that made everything quieter than it already was. A thin frost covered the low grasses, turning the broken mud into a crusted sheen that cracked under pressure. The fire pits had long since gone cold. Elias stood with his hands tucked into his sleeves, shoulders rounded, not from fatigue, but from stillness held too long. No one had spoken for over an hour. The bull stirred. At first it was just a shift of the foreleg, a dragging motion like something uncertain if weight could be trusted again. His trunk curled faintly, brushing against the wool tarp that still clung to his side. He didn't lift his head, but he moved again, back legs shifting, shoulders tightening against the earth. The sound he made was low and airless, almost a grunt, but not sharp. It was effort, real, concentrated effort. The matriarch stepped forward before anyone else moved. She paused once, then came to stand just ahead of him, facing the rising slope. Her presence didn't beckon or direct. It steadied. The others held their line but widened it slightly, giving space. The bull pushed forward. First, his front legs gathered beneath him, elbows shaking under the strain. The back legs followed slowly, uncoordinated, slipping once before catching purchase. The rise was uneven, more collapse into standing than a true lift, but he made it upright. His head hung low, ears drooped, ribs showing. His body swayed once, then settled. He did not trumpet. He did not look around. He simply stood. The matriarch turned her body toward the slope. He followed her. Step by step he moved, not steady but willing. His hooves dragged at times, catching on roots and stones, but he stayed upright. Every few paces his head dipped farther, but the matriarch paused when he needed it. No calls passed between them. Only breath. Only weight shifting forward in silence. The herd moved with them. Not as an escort, not as a celebration, just as part of the motion. Each one followed at a distance that never pressured but never left space too wide. The youngest kept to the rear, quiet and slow, eyes fixed forward. The slope ahead was not steep, but long, climbing gently toward the edge of the valley. Beyond it, a frost-lit plain stretched toward brush and broken ridges. No one from the ranger team followed. Elias remained by the tree line, boots still rooted to the frost-bitten ground. He did not speak. One of the younger rangers shifted beside him, exhaled softly, then lowered his gaze. Nothing needed to be said. The rescue was done. What followed now belonged to the herd. The bull slowed near the top of the ridge. His knees buckled slightly, but the matriarch stepped closer, her body brushing against his flank just once. He did not fall. He adjusted, continued. At the crest, he paused, head lifting faintly as if sensing the open space ahead. Then he disappeared over the rise. One by one, the others followed, no calls, no turning back, just the faint press of movement along the slope. The dust settled behind them. A few stray grains of frost scattered in their path. When the last shape vanished from view, the wind returned, soft, dry, and slow-moving through the grass. Nothing was left on the riverbank now but flattened earth, damp ash, and the light imprint of wide, steady feet.